everybody out there in Streamland. It's Paula Nutting, your musculoskeletal specialist, and coming to you for this month on our Ask Me Anything, Take It Away with experts in the industry, with what they have to say, what they can possibly offer you, and what you can ask of them. So we've got between 50 minutes and an hour with my most amazing eclectic friend, Gil Hedley, who originally came from Florida. We were saying beforehand, from the beach that's got the highest amount of shark attacks in the world. He's also the fascial guru, and many of you will recognize him by his famous YouTube of the Great Fuzz speech, which is all about fascia. So I'm going to introduce Gil to jump on board, and we're going to have fun. And if you've seen some stuff from Gil, I have no idea where this is going to head, but it's going to be brilliant. So, hey, Gil, come on board.
Thanks for having me, Paula. And I fled Florida a couple of years ago. I'm in Colorado in the mountains now, where we have bears in the driveway. So it's not getting any better. Sharks, bears, we have lions here. It's like that.
Yeah, my sister lives in Durango in Colorado.
Oh, she knows.
Yeah. I was over there, and I was talking to her, actually, I was chatting to her on the phone one day, and she was like, holy shit, excuse the French, holy shit. I said, what? She said, there's a coyote or something like bear. I was like, well, don't talk to me. Like, get up and go inside. Yeah.
Yeah, we were driving down our extended drive here and went around the bend, and there was Mama Bear guarding her cubs up a tree. We were like, hi, we love you. Bye.
Yeah. And you put big Besser blocks on top of your rubbish bins because they come in and eat your stuff, don't they?
I actually have a bear-proof bin that has a lock on it, so they can knock it down and turn it upside down, but they won't get dinner.
Yeah. They had friends next door to Jill's place who had a spa, like a outside hot water spa, and the bears got into that.
Oh,
it was this color by the time they got out again.
They're a little drooly.
Well, I know who you are, and probably if there's people out there that don't know who you are, they've been hiding under a rock for the last.
I'm still trying to find out who I am. That's been my life's work.
So, Gil Hedley, when did you start? You were originally anatomist, or how did you get into dissection?
Nope. Anatomy is a hobby of mine. I got into grad school as a theological ethicist. So my PhD is in religious and theological ethics, which took about a decade to do. And then while I was there, I was quite out of body, as we were called upon to be, in order to live in the meta world of ethics and philosophy. And so I got into Tai Chi. Yeah. And Tai Chi got my hands on people for acupressure massages, and I gave those to family for years, and then realized I kind of had a gift with my hands. So when I was starting to finish up my project there, I was like, I got to do something else. So I went to Rolfing training.
Yeah, wow.
And that got me into bodywork. So I have no formal training in anatomy at all. I'm basically self-taught. I went to the lab as Dr. Hedley because I was Dr. Hedley. And they're like, oh, yes, Dr. Hedley, come right in.
Doctor in theology.
Doctor in theology. I told them that too. They were just nice. And so I was basically a Rolfer, trying to be a better Rolfer, going to the lab and using my credential to get in the door. Mm. And then I very quickly realized that the challenge that I faced in studying the body was the challenge of a lifetime. And I shifted my energy into teaching anatomy rather than being a one-on-one practitioner.
So you love it, right?
Yeah, it's been a fabulous ride so far.
Yeah.
I've been at it for, 28 years now.
Okay. Did you ever meet Ida Rolf?
Was she around? No. Ida Rolf died in 1979, and I showed up at the Rolf Institute 12 years later. So okay. I missed her by a leap and a bound.
Yeah.
But I was inspired very much by Ida Rolf, because Ida Rolf was a PhD. And when I got the address book for the Rolf Institute, I literally went through it and counted every master's degree and PhD in there. And it turned out maybe 10 or 12% of Rolfers had advanced degrees. And I think that was interesting to me to see so many PhDs and master's degrees at the Rolf Institute. And I thought, well, there must be something here that can hold the attention of that kind of person, which I am. And so, and, you know, because Ida Rolf had a PhD in biochemistry. Of course, in the 20s, the demands were a little lighter back then than they were in 1990 something, when I had to spend 8 years getting my degree.
God.
And I was quick. I was a quickie. My friend stayed for 12 years, 15 years, whatever.
Yeah, my husband number one, I met him nursing, but he went in through, he was in the seminary, wanted to become a priest.
Yeah.
And they went through heavy theology and philosophy, and so they spent the first 3 years learning how to question everything.
Yeah.
And then the next 3 years learning how to devotedly believe in God and Christ with all of that background knowledge, and it weeds them out. They go like, you know, you've got to understand that you've got to question everything, and then you can't question that.
Yeah, I would, my training would have made me the ethics professor of your first husband.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. You would have thrown him out. He would have annoyed you. He would have asked you so many questions.
I would have thrown me out. I never would have survived it myself. Here I am.
He was great. We were nursing students together, and he would sit there and write and say, ask that question. Ask that question. He would never ask questions of the teachers, but and obviously, okay, sure. Can you? Yeah. Anyway, pretty interesting. So I was really intrigued listening to you and Diane Matowski and Till. And it was right at a moment where both Till had lost his sister, and Diane was coming out of a pretty just a traumatic marital event. And you were talking about stuff that I kind of went, emotions and pain. And I thought it was such a cool thing that you were talking about. But I know that you're fascia as well, right? So I kind of went,
I'm a whole person guy. Integral anatomy, you know, I get pegged as a fascia guy because fascia people like someone who talks about fascia, and I do that. But I'm really, with my ethics background and my interest in the whole person, you know, that's a stepping stone into the whole person for me. It's not the place that I'm driving at.
Yeah.
It's where, it's what allows me to explore more deeply the whole person. And when I do dissection, it's not so much with a view to whatever, being a fascia guru, as it is to connecting myself up inside, you know, by witnessing everything that's in there, everything, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you're actually doing a cadaver dissection and throwing everything out and keeping the fascia, as opposed to the days.
No, exactly. Now, I'm all for the underdog, and fascia is definitely an underdog in anatomical studies, so I've given it its due. But I love the gallbladder too.
Yeah, we all love the gallbladder. It's very annoying when they remove it from fair fat female.
So sad.
Yeah, exactly. What emotions and pain and fascia, and I know you talk about all levels of fascia, deep fascia and superficial fascia and the perifascia. Do you reckon that they're all affected the same way, or is there a linking system? How does, you know, you go, oh my God, I'm hurt, and then you feel pain? If you're going to go hypothesizing,
well, pain is essentially an energetic phenomenon, right? And then it localizes where it's not able to move through. So that can happen anywhere at any level where it's not moving through. I don't make pain always about nerves, which might sound scandalous. I'm a sort of a student of an esoteric healer, long since gone, but they never really leave, you know. And he would say, you know, that pain is in the feeling giving ether, you know, and it might localize in a nerve or in a particular tissue or whatever, but basically it's about stuck energy at a certain level. I mean, when it's stuck energy, of course, pain can be because someone just sawed their arm off, and that sucks too. That's not stuck energy.
Unstuck energy.
Exactly. It's going to be stuck to the floor in a minute, but that particular teacher had many surgeries and never took anesthesia. He would just withdraw his feeling giving ether from the area of the body that they were doing surgery on. And chat with the surgeon while they cut him.
Bloody hell. Excuse the French, but wow. Yeah,
you don't have to excuse any of your French for me. I can outcuss you any day of the week, I guarantee you.
Some of my friends might challenge that. I've a younger brother and younger sister and 2 older siblings as well. So there's 5 of us, and my brother and I play golf quite regularly, and he's the cussmeister of the golf club. So when people introduce him, are you Bill Nutting's sister? I'll go, yes, but I'm not like Bill. Toned it down by 25%. Yeah, and I agree with you with that whole like you either. But so if I've hurt myself, but I'm in a negative space, it's going to hurt more.
It's so impactful. Your emotional relationship to the pain of any kind. I mean, I was formerly, I'm going to say, a connoisseur of pain. I've had my share, and part of how I got my way out of it was in not small part by changing my emotional relationship to the fact that I was experiencing pain, and stop being defeatist about it, and stop being judgmental about it, and stop being woe's me about it, and having a pity party because I'm in pain, and why me, and what did I do, and is this bad karma or whatever, and how can I get out of it? And all that stuff is just garbage when it comes to rising above pain and healing from pain. That's really an inflammatory response of the emotions rather than a serviceable path through pain and beyond pain. Because I've been there, I've done that. And I know from my own experience that you can change your energy and your relationship to pain in such a way that maybe it's not nearly as horrific as it can be.
Yeah, reactive or disassociative. Although disassociative is the wrong word either, because you don't want to actually, that's just putting it behind and ignoring it. I think that you've got to look at it as a bedfellow that you can kind of go, all right, well, you're there. But am I going to absorb, am I going to drink from the same poison that I'm talking about? Like, oh my God, I hate you because you did this, or why has it happened to me, or why, like that's.
Or just something like my XYZ body part is killing me. That kind of separation, as opposed to saying, I don't feel well here in my body. And then you can be like, well, where do you feel well in your body? Is there anywhere? Is there a single cell? Or maybe there's a space between 2 cells that you could hang out in for a minute while you change your mental disposition. I'm completely not lecturing anybody. I'm literally talking about my own methods of dealing with, my history of extreme pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Which I call history because I had the most fantastic experience 2 days ago where I actually successfully meditated myself out of a headache for the first time in my life. And it was quite an ecstatic experience.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. Like,
yeah.
And you meditate daily or try to? Or
I do. Yeah. Couple times a day.
That would be that. Yeah.
Because it feels good.
Yeah, it does.
And it turns out, you can, the thing is, even if you're in pain, and this is something I learned a while back, you can't settle for just being in pain. You have to allow that you can also actually even simultaneously be in pleasure, which is just human instinct, right? You bump your knee, you put your hands on it. That's a very small example of being in pain and then offering pleasure to the same area. And it's a mixed signal then, and it lowers the intensity, which is just natural reflexive instinct on our species' part. But you can take that to other levels, where you can be in quite a bit of pleasure while being in quite a bit of pain, and dilute the intensity. Even just as an emotional state, you can be in a very elated emotional state while being in physical pain. At which point the physical pain just isn't as impactful.
Wow. Yeah. Have you done Vipassana?
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so Vipassana is a Buddhist philosophy where you can actually normally they start it at 10 days. So it's a 10-day silent retreat. And then once you've done that, you go to 7 days and then 3 days. But they will not let you start at 3 days. You've got to go boots in. And it's where you'll wake up at 4, you'll have some water, then you'll go and you'll sit in meditation pose for up to 3 hours. And that's where that pain, and you can feel the pain in your legs, but you don't move because you're in that. I'm in meditation, I'm staying here. My legs are actually completely numb and they're about to fall off. But yeah.
I did something like that many years ago, actually, in grad school. The Jesuits paid for me to do a 10-day silent retreat with them. I was being wooed by all these different priestly orders who thought I'd be a good date. And I after 10 days, I was like, that was the easiest, most ridiculous. I could be silent for the rest of my life and I would be perfectly content. This is way too easy a life. I think I've done this many times before. I'm going to have to go out into the world. And so I did.
Yeah, get a different life. You've been through there. You've probably been a Buddhist in many times.
No doubt. Certainly been a Catholic many times.
And therein lies my Catholic guilt. I have to feel guilty because that's.
I have worked very hard to step beyond my Catholic guilt.
Yeah, well, I've got the Protestant work ethic, my friend. It's like you get up and do it, even if my mother would say, you're going to school, unless there's a bone sticking out through your skin, you're going to school. It's all about her getting to golf and bridge.
There's some messaging for you.
And it sticks hard. My kids, same thing. Comes out of my mouth. I go, God, I can't believe I actually said that. And you guys were talking about the Buddhist philosophy with Diane. And I personally, when they say, if I come back, I'm going to be reincarnated as a bug, or you come back as a dolphin or a monkey or, whatever, a glowworm. But I was talking to a friend and I kind of believe it that the Buddhist philosophy is more that we as a species love one another and respect one another, and we move up transcendentally each time we all don't shoot people, rob people, steal, abuse, misabuse, whatever. Then collectively the whole species evolves.
I'd buy that. I do feel that our personal work is of universal service, that our own energy of evolution and consciousness raising is literally not only of service to this planet and everything on it, but actually that it's interdimensional, that we actually are because there's not that many, who are free to choose well, free to do good. It's quite a show, I think, to watch the human species evolve. And although there might be, you wouldn't know it from the news, I'm quite certain that our species is rapidly evolving, and I'm quite excited for the consciousness of our planet raising rapidly, even while there are, let's say, contrary intentions afoot. I feel that, I think we're doing better than the news would let on in terms of human kindness, human interaction, human will to raise up consciousness.
Yeah. I think that's where we're so lucky, because touch has the power to give so much more than, like, when you touch, you're actually giving more than receiving, I believe. Like, our intent is, like, we will receive at a different energetic level. But, I just think that when we touch, it's just, we can offer beautiful experiences for anyone.
I absolutely agree. And a part of why I became a Rolfer was because I believed it was a profession that would demand of me constantly that I grow as a human being to be of quality service. I think that's true of all the touch professions.
Yeah.
They kind of put it on you. I mean, you're working in somebody's field, they're in need. You have to be there. You have to manage your presence, which you can't say for every profession. But it's an opportunity, an incredible opportunity when you're standing there in that position of leadership and responsibility, touching somebody. It's like, wow, I got to raise my vibe here. I don't want to start talking politics when I could be elevating this person's consciousness, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we're blessed that we're one of the few professions on the planet that can actually touch for longer than 15 minutes and it's and then put a machine on. Like, we actually have the luxury of spending an hour or more.
Incredible luxury, and so much good gets done. I believe it's an incredibly valuable service. And of course, if a person isn't doing their own self-care, it can, and don't know how to kind of slough off energy and that sort of thing, then you could burn out. You got to take care of the instrument.
We used to talk about shaking hands down when we first started doing massage, and Oriental Massage 1. You got any tips for people who are new therapists out there that like to slough off that energy?
Yeah, you got to do state changes. You got to do state changes that are both visual, tactile, and whole body. So I do this at the first day of every one of my classes. I give people instructions on how to clear themselves of the experience, just so they can move on with their day.
I'd love you to pass that info on.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I like, as a clearing method visually, because it all has to be cleared. So handshaking, that's great, or stick them in a bowl of ice water, or just wash them is fine.
Just before you put them on somebody's back.
Yeah. And then visually, I would have people like look at something in nature that's beautiful and close their eyes until they can, and then open them and close them and study it, and open them and close them and go back and forth 2 or 3 times until you've got a pretty clear picture in your mind of some beautiful thing in nature, outside the door, a flower, a plant, a tree, a pet, whatever. And when you can close your eyes and see that, then you've cleared your visual field and you have an alternative. And also then a whole body state change by the end of your day. I mean, which can be a walk or a shower or some vigorous change, dancing to your favorite song, whatever it is that creates a shift in energy and puts you in a different place and mind frame.
Yeah. Great tips. Really, really good tips. Like finishing a day when it's when it's summer here, getting out, you can see people, like there's a lot of us that get out and walk. I'm on the river, so I mean, I'm not on the river, but close enough to, and it's gorgeous. It's fabulous. I'm just looking at some of the comments down here. Hans Christoph, who I know, he's over in Washington State, said, "Remember the mime calling muscles derogatory names?" Does that ring a bell?
Remember the who?
The mime calling muscles derogatory names.
The mime? I do not remember the mime calling muscles derogatory names.
No.
Do you, Hans? Do you recall? Tell us about the mime.
Yeah, if you could type that in, that'd be cool. The other thing he said, the Lord Jesus himself said, there is more happiness in giving than receiving. Yeah, exactly. I much prefer to give. Much prefer to give.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, I appreciate that saying very much and know it well from my own upbringing. And also, I found a transformational moment in my life in college when I found myself only able to give.
Yeah.
Because I took that particular statement with such seriousness that I failed to give one thing that my friend pointed out. She said, "Gil, you need to give the gift of giving. You need to offer your own receptivity to other people as well, or it's just a one-way street." And that changed my life.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, right. That's kind of egotistical of me to only be on the giving side and not allow some friend or stranger to give back to me when and that way it's a reciprocal process. So then I was like, okay, I'm really going to give everything away. I'm going to offer my receptivity too. And life got better.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And so true. Like I love receiving something. My partner came back from Darwin. He was up for 4 days for work. And, if it comes with a little trinket of something nice, of course, I'll gracefully accept it, especially if it's French champagne. I gracefully accept that. So this is a silly question. And actually, Hans has just said I posted on our mentorship page, and I'll have a quick squeeze with regards to that because I cannot remember. For people who actually don't know what Rolfing is, because I kind of know, but I don't really know, what is Rolfing?
Well, structural integration is actually what Dr. Ida Rolf called her work. And the people who surrounded her and learned structural integration, as she described it from her, called it Rolfing. And basically, Ida Rolf was a biochemist who studied fascia, basically, and its physical properties in the laboratory in her day back in the 20s or something. But then she got into yoga too and all sorts of esoteric things and was friends with a bunch of osteopaths and basically combined her gained wisdom into sort of a systematic approach to restoring balance to the human form and the human person with an intention to both improve their physical experience and also mature them as a person. So she had that dual intent, was always not just straightening you out, but maturing the being, which I thought was awesome. And so she started doing her work and trying to train osteopaths in her methodologies for basically looking at a person's imbalances in their body, using her hands through a bunch of different manipulative techniques, and then bringing them into a state of sustained and transformed postural alignment, gait, and sense of themselves. But the osteopaths, well, they didn't really want to quit osteopathy to work with Ida Rolf. So instead, she got called out to the Esalen Institute by Fritz Perls, who was out there doing, hot seat therapy at the time in like 1968. And she found a community there of massage therapists at Esalen who wanted to learn what she was doing and thought it was amazing. And so she started teaching massage therapists at Esalen and eventually, formed a school in Boulder, Colorado, the Rolf Institute. So she spawned a huge number of different modalities and branded techniques to work with the body kind of in her shadow and inspiration. But those who call themselves Rolfers are generally certified at the Rolf Institute and do her 10 series and beyond. So there was like a sequence of sessions, and it wasn't like massage. It was, I always used to say when I was a Rolfer that it was somewhere between massage and chiropractic, because the intention wasn't really to make you feel good in the moment, and Rolfing often didn't feel good in the moment. But when you stood up from the table, then it was like, whoa, something is altered in me in an important way. And so they got short-term changes on the table, but more important was the time in between when you could integrate what was happening and your body would literally, adopt and change to the input. And so I found it to be a very profound and helpful approach. And Ida Rolf was very, she was working at a time when, Wilhelm Reich was put in jail for, they just hated him, and she didn't want to be, seen as woo-woo or anything, but she was like, I'm an educator, and if you get better from my touch, that's your problem, not mine. So
yeah, wow.
She was very nervous. She didn't want to go to jail.
No, and deep and slow, like the practice.
Generally, yeah, deep and slow, or put it where it belongs and ask for for movement is a famous Rolfing statement where you basically are kind of leaning on somebody and they're like moving their toes underneath what you're doing, or moving their leg, or whatever you're working on, moving their back. So often you're calling for movement while you're in contact with a person. But Rolfing isn't so much about any particular technique as about general principles that are deployed each session to sort of move you towards that integrated whole balanced thing that is kind of the lightness of being that comes with alignment.
Yeah. So she was working on fascia?
She was. I don't know. I didn't read her dissertation. I don't know how deep she actually went there, but fascia was on her mind, and she really is the fascia queen. Ida Rolf really put fascia on the map in the bodywork world, and her followers as well. I mean, Ida Rolf's Institute spawned quite a crew of teachers out there. Eric Dalton, Art Riggs, Tom Myers are all Rolfers. Till, there's me at one point, so I'm not tooting my horn. I'm just saying that there was a lot of teaching energy coming out of the Rolf Institute.
Yeah. It's so interesting because we don't have a lot of Rolfers in Australia. It just hasn't kind of transitioned over here. But we have a lot of myofascial release therapists that work either deep or superficial. And it generally is looking at, well, some of it is active and some of it's passive and some of it's direct and some of it's indirect. You watch someone, you put your hands on somebody's suboccipital ridge in supine and allow them to unwind, or hold an arm and allow the arm to completely unwind. And it's a crazy feel to, and you actually, and you probably have done this before, but the few times I've done that kind of subtle unwinding with them, you feel like you are with them. You and they're working together, and you've just become one unit that's helping with whatever is happening. It's like snakes in there.
Yeah. Rolfing is generally active that way, or can be. Or it's not every second of it, but that was definitely part of it. We were coordinating movement. Yeah. I didn't last so long as a Rolfer. I just did it for a few years, and then I became an anatomy junkie. I was a user and a pusher.
Well, you're a damn good pusher, babe, because we keep watching your weekly sessions and like they're pretty amazing, and you've got so much.
I see in the thing down below, it says follow Gil Hedley on Instagram. I'm like, I don't even know what's on there. My son does it for me.
How old's your son?
He's 21.
Oh, he's probably way too old to be really handling. If he was 12, he'd be doing reels and TikTok, and he'd be in next level.
Yeah, I do write on Facebook probably once or twice a week, and of course my website is kind of bottomless pit.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful bottomless pit, I've got to say, for anyone who wants to learn about the body. And you're right, it's not just fascia. You actually have got other components in there. But given that most people probably have come on board to actually have a listen about, manual therapy and treating fascia, let's go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, sure.
Superficial, deep, can we affect the perifascia with how we treat?
More than anything, I would say. In other words, I think it's actually the superficial fascia and the perifascia that are going to be most responsive to touch in the short term, whereas the deep fascia is going to be evolving at the effect of the changes wrought in those tissues during a session. So deep fascia, think of it as sort of a stabilizing long-term element. You're not going to change deep fascia in a minute, but you can change perifascia in a minute. And this is one of my, I don't know, maybe discoveries or points of evolvement because I did show up at the dissection lab as a Rolfer, and I was definitely under the impression that I was working the deep fascia, and that was the thing. But once I got to the stage where I realized, oh my gosh, the deep fascia, that those thick fibers are actually embedded in a membrane system that I call perifascia. I called it fuzz at first, and then filmy fascia. Now I call it perifascia because it's just better language. It's not as fun, maybe, but so those deep regular collagenous fibers are actually completely buried and embedded in perifascia, or a kind of a gelatinous membrane system. And when you're touching somebody, that's what's going shlaka, shlaka, shlaka. That's what moves under your hands. And if you're using kind of a firm direct pressure, that contact will eventually start to soften, and you'll find yourself sort of swimming. And this is every Rolfer's experience, as you're leaning on somebody, and then this is my elbow working on my desk. You're leaning on somebody, and you start to feel like, there I go. And you start to sort of swim and follow some internal kind of movement. And what I would say is at that point, you're actually ice skating on the perifascia. It's actually like your elbow has become a hockey puck, and that fluid interface between your elbow and the deep fascia is what you're feeling movement in. You're not feeling movement in the deep fascia. You're feeling movement in the perifascia, which can be warmed, hydrated, mobilized way quicker than any deep fascia, which is generally structurally resistant to that kind of effort in the short term. In the long term, it'll transform. But in the short term, you have to set up the change for the deep fascia by addressing these much easier to address tissues. And if you take your mindset out of the heavy-handed approach that you think is necessary to alter deep fascia and sort of bring yourself back to, oh, wait a second, maybe I'm actually working with a fluid membrane system here, you'll touch very differently and probably a bit more gently. And you'll actually go deeper. Because when you're leaning into someone's deep fascia, there's a lot of free sensory nerve endings there, many of which are signaling pain. And the body will naturally defend itself, even if your client is saying, go deeper, go deeper. Their tissue is saying, fuck you, fuck you. And, and then you're in an arm wrestling match with them, and maybe you'll overcome and overwhelm their tissue, and you'll be breaking into a sweat, and they'll be like, I love it when you overwhelm me. But I don't consider that to be like a dance that I ever wanted to do. And so my work got to be quite a bit more subtle once I realized that these membrane systems could be worked with, that blood vessels could be worked with, that you could kind of whisper your way in there rather than tromp and barge.
Yeah. I wonder how much of our perifascia is also responding at the same time.
Absolutely. That's right. And you're sort of like squidging water out of it, and then kind of flushing it back in. That's my model, or maybe my illusion. But I do know that from much dissection experience that the perifascia is super hydrated as compared to other tissues. It really is a water reservoir. But in a mucoidal form. It's not like it's sloshing around at the same viscosity as water. It's more mucoidal and consequently very responsive to touch. I would love for somebody to tell me the ways in which it's supplied by the nervous system, but it's harder to see that sort of thing than you might think.
Okay, so we're talking about how the nervous system can make it more solid or more liquid, or allowing that transition to occur.
I'm just thinking, I think back to our very original question about pain, that might be a place that's susceptible to pain and inflammation. If you like bang your elbow or your knee or something and it blows up like a soccer ball, that fluid accumulation is not happening in your deep fascia. It's happening in your perifascia.
Yeah.
Because that's the place where there could be such a rapid expansion, because of the organization of the fibers there is very higgledy-piggledy. It's an ordered chaos, let's say. In other words, the organization is disorganized, in order to allow for movement in any direction and for the transmission of both fluids and even a microbiome lives there. I mean, we tend to think of our microbiome as maybe being on our skin if we think that far, definitely being in our gut if we thought of it at all. But it's actually there in the perifascia as well. We have microbiome all through our body.
Wow, I didn't actually know that. I mean, I knew the gut, obviously, the gut health, etc. But that's actually quite incredible.
It's very interesting. It's maybe more new research on the inner life of our alternate personality in the form of our microbial population. But I mean, someone like Peter Friedel has demonstrated conclusively and even filmed the movement, say, of a cancer cell wiggling its way through, interstitial spaces and such. And perifascia is basically just interstitium at a different solar scale, right? So as above, so below, we have this membrane system around our large structures. Every single vein, every artery, every nerve, every tendon has a perifascial membrane surrounding it. But when we go down to scale our way down from those wrappings and smaller and smaller and smaller until we get to the cellular level, we're not going to call it perifascia anymore because you can't dissect it in a sheet, but we will call it interstitium after Neil Teza.
Yeah.
And I think it's well named.
It is well named. The that talking about what's inner world, outer world. John Sharkey.
I love John. He's a great guy.
He is a great guy. He did a webinar where we had to set the alarm for 2 a.m. to watch it. But the bad timing between the three where we are. But he did a whole thing about the cosmos and how it translates what is out there is actually mirrored in here. It was beautiful. It's like
and true.
Yeah, and true.
And true. Yeah, I mean, for being a student of the body as I have been for so long, it's a beautiful mirror of the whole universe. I mean, people are like, how can you do that for so many, And I would have asked myself the same question. Like my attention span is like, it's got to be a really big thing to keep my attention. But this thing has kept my attention for decades because it's like, oh my gosh, it's the whole universe. You can just keep looking and looking and looking, and you go further and further and further. And even at the gross level, I just keep seeing more.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you're picking up biomes, that's in and itself really, really interesting. And the fact that you can be talking about watching a cancer cell weaving its evil.
That just blew us away. Anyone who was at the Berlin 2018 Fascia Congress, we were all like,
yeah,
it was really shocking. And there were some implications for massage therapists, and that caused quite a ruckus because there was kind of a debate about
whether you can or can't massage.
Yeah, exactly. About, sort of facilitating the passage of cancer cells around the body through massage. And it was really, when we saw that film, we all kind of had put the fear of God in us, like, oh, wow, that's really relevant.
Yeah.
But also, you could be moving your immune system into a better state to deal with such things as well. So
it's isn't it? Like it's if your intention is to sit on the perifascia and work on the perifascia, or is my intent to be working with the lymph and mobilizing the lymph to calm the inflammation. Like this, we're working probably at the same depth.
Yes, and also if your intention is to facilitate raising the energy of that body, because someone who is suffering from cancer, at least in the area where they're suffering from it, is having lowered vibration, literally. You can facilitate them just by raising their vibration, by raising their spirits, because this spiritual disposition, the emotional set point of a person, if it's set into very dense, miserable energies, is going to be a match for that. And if you come into elevated states of emotion and intention, you literally are facilitating the immune system's functioning. So, if you're going to be working on someone like that, I suggest you really rev yourself up in your intention to serve, uplift, elevate, expand, because it's very hard for something like cancer cells to live in that kind of environment. No. Now, I'm sure there's chemo doctors somewhere out there horrified at what I'm saying, and
we'll be banging on, but we don't give up. So exactly. What I do, I'm just going through an Audible book, Joe Dispenza, The Habit of Breaking Yourself, or
breaking the habit of being yourself. I was just on a Joe Dispenza workshop, so I'm.
Oh, really? I was looking.
He came to Denver, so I went. It was fantastic. We had 3,000 people in a very elevated state, and it was very uplifting, I have to say.
Yeah, and that's exactly his point, is that if you are feeling down, you will be vibrationally much heavier than if you are in a frontal lobe, open, conscious state of enlightenment and
you can measure this stuff. This isn't fantasy. You can measure it with a variety of measurements, basically oriented towards measuring heart coherence.
Yeah,
heart mass stuff, which absolutely correlates to improved overall functioning, whether it be cognitive functioning. So if your heart is coherent, you'll do better on a test. Your physicality will improve when your heart is coherent, beating in a coherent rhythm, meaning you can literally like chuck a spear better or aim better, hit a ball more accurately. So it's not just some strange fantasy on the part of New Age whatevers. This is beautifully documented stuff. So I'm on board with that.
Well, he was talking about prayer, and they did a research in the early 1990s or mid 1990s, where they had 3,392 people who were ill in hospital, and they gave people, okay, you're going to intently pray for this half and not pray for this half. So that they just did this whole thing. Didn't make any difference to the amount of deaths really between the two subjects, but the people who got better en masse were the ones that were prayed for. But the difference is that he said, did you ever work out why you would have 3,392 people? Why would that figure be, how would you get that? And it was during the Spanish flu in the 1900s, where all these people were sick, ill, dying, and they set this in 1990, so almost 100 years after the fact. And we were saying, okay, you got to pray about patient in bed 1, 2, 3. You got to pay blah blah blah. So we're looking at quantum physics at its most tangible, when you can actually make a difference to people in prayer ahead of time.
Yeah, there's not a thought that passes through our mind that isn't biologically active. Our thoughts are biologically active, and our emotions are biologically active, and they are actually our superpowers. That's the one thing we actually have some control over. I mean, we play the victim to ourselves all day long. We play the victim to everything and everybody. We try and meddle and don't mind our own business with respect to our bodies. And our business is kind of at a CEO vision level, as I see it. We're the visionary for whatever 10 trillion cells, and our thoughts and emotions, especially when they're harmonious with each other, are creating energetic cascades through every one of those cells, and that is the internal environment which triggers health, which changes what genes are expressing.
Yeah, much more than what you eat, it's what you think, I believe.
Much more.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We need to be doing that more. Like, we actually need to be teaching the art of mindfulness more and more and more for mainstream. It doesn't really get touched. It's, as you said, it's more in the, the crystal wavers. Those people believe in that rubbish.
It's absolutely valid, and I don't expect to be encouraged in that direction by the evening news. It's more of a word of mouth thing. It's by word of mouth that we will evolve our planet, not by what we hear on the news.
I never watch the news. I'm sorry. If something was going to happen that was going to be chaotic, I prefer not to know about it and live in a bit of joy for as many times before the comet comes in and crashes into the earth and kills us all. Like, thanks, I don't need to have 3 months warning.
I respect your position.
Yeah,
I have also embarked upon a news fast, and it's delightful.
yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? The
We
more
have to
information.
really, we literally have to take back ownership of our emotional and mental states, because if we yield our emotional and mental states over to the offerings that are made in the larger community, we will suffer. And it is possible to reclaim, as a mature adult, the reins of one's own emotional and mental states. In fact, I would say that's our responsibility. That is what we're here for, because that's pretty much the only thing we can do. You don't know how your friggin' cells work. You don't know how you walk across the room. We don't know jack shit about our body. And I've been studying it my whole life, and being able to put names on parts doesn't mean you know anything at all. You know something about your body when you are inhabiting it in such a way, with an emotional and mental state, that you can manifest a higher level of being.
Yeah.
That's our job. That's what we'll be checked in with at the pearly gates. Not like, how many Facebook likes did you get?
Yeah, yeah.
It's gonna be like, what did you do with the gifts you've been given? Did you put them under a rock, or did you put them on top of a bushel basket for all the world to see? We have each been given gifts.
Yeah.
And they're amazing. The power of a person who is integrated, the power of a conscious person. Look at friggin' Gandhi or someone like that,
Yeah.
right? You got a 98-pound guy in homemade underwear driving the British Empire out of India with the sheer force of his moral intent that rallied an energy in a country that's very powerful. I always think of the man at Tiananmen Square,
Yes.
standing in front of a row of tanks and stopping them with
Yeah.
his moral conviction. That's what
Yeah.
stopped them, not his body. His body was just a little puddle of meat compared to a row of tanks. But they stopped because his moral conviction was a potent force. And there's not one of us on this planet who is incapable of that.
Yeah.
We are designed for that.
They're wise words. Yeah. Have you heard of pointing the bone?
Pointing the bone.
In
What's that?
Aboriginal culture, if you in your tribe community, if you've done something wrong and they go, all right, this is your punishment, they will point the bone at that person, and within a period of time that person will perish and die.
Oh.
It's like, it's corporal punishment.
Seriously.
So, yeah. And their spiritual culture says that, like, that they have the power to leave their life. So that person has gone, I'm out, and I'm now going to succeed my life, and spiritually I'll go somewhere else and leave this pound of meat. And it's recordable. They do it all. Well, they don't do it all the time anymore that we hear, but that was very part of the culture, pointing the bone.
Wow.
Yeah.
And many yogic master in India has gone into Mahasamadhi cross-legged in front of their community, just like, goodbye. Left cross-legged, sitting there, kind of. That's how they go. In some traditions, it's like, okay, this has been awesome. You people are wonderful.
And see you later. Yeah.
Out the door.
Yeah, well.
But honestly, we underestimate ourselves. I think that an integrated human, coordinated with, I don't mistake with pride that I know so much, but I do believe that I have guidance that knows a shit ton.
Yeah. I
And
know. Intuitive practice is not just, you're getting it from somewhere. Like,
well, this is the thing. You get a great idea, and we're immediately like, I thought of that. It's like, bullshit, you thought of that. You haven't thought of your own original thought since the first breath you took. But you do occasionally get out of the way enough of your own ego to hear the guidance, and then we immediately like copyright it and try and sell it. That's the human species.
yeah, that's so true. That's so true. That's why I quite like this. This is so much fun because it's a free portal. We get a chance to have a chat. My ego is stroked because I get a chance to spend an hour with some pretty friggin' amazing people, you included. And I don't know, it's fun.
Yeah.
It makes you feel good.
Right.
I know, it's great. It is great. We're almost up to the hour, which is it goes fast.
Oh no.
It's been fun. The only person I couldn't get off in the hour was, which sounds a bit sexual, but
that is quite a lot of work.
Yeah, I know. John Sharkey, 1 hour, 38 minutes. I'm going, get off. I want to go to bed. I'm so tired.
It's so funny. I was just opening up a box of stuff because I moved here just a couple months ago. And I have to. This was a present from John that he handed to me in an elevator in Berlin. Isn't that cool? It's like a toroidal springy thingy.
Yeah, it's kind of like
goes like
slinky.
that. Yeah, it's like a slinky, but it's like, whoa.
Yeah, wow.
So there we are, right? Thank you, John.
And when you look through that, it's almost like looking through the cell. Like we're looking through the looking through the looking through the looking through.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful combination of I don't even know. I just think it's cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I want to be like that thing.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think you almost are, my friend. I think you almost are. So you do weekly YouTube little clips for people so they can get in and see that if they follow your www.gilhedley.com.
Yeah, there's my website, and I have like a free membership with about 20 hours of good solid content there, and then I have a subscription to my site for folks who want to take the very, very deep dive, where I have a couple hundred hours and another 100 coming soon of content. That'll take you a while to work through. And then I do these weekly I started doing them just a couple months ago, and it's been really fun. I just filmed another 7 of them today with my son.
Oh, wow.
And I just I get a scrap of paper and I'm like, what should I talk about for 5 minutes? And I just jot stuff down, and then we film it. It's all one take wonders. And I just that's what it is, folks. Like, that's what happened.
And then your son fixes up and puts a little R if you've spelt something we haven't put it in.
That was me. I edited that. My spelling is horrific.
Who cares?
It's getting worse, actually. I'm actually starting to forget how to spell words that I used to know how to spell. So not a good sign.
Oh, no. Nothing that a bit of emotional intelligence can't fix.
Yeah. So that YouTube stuff, you could just type my name, Gil Hedley, or you can type Somonaut and go to my channel and see whatever's coming up.
Yeah, good name, Somonaut. So for somatics, right? I'm guessing.
No, I made up that word. I was the editor of the journal of the Rolf Institute when I was straight out of my PhD and straight into the Rolf Institute. They're like, get that guy to edit the journal. So I took on that task, and I interviewed Emily Conrad Dawood at the time. I don't know if you ever heard of her, but she's an amazing healer, shaman, dancer, and founder of work called Continuum, which is based in Los Angeles. And I was a great fan of Emily. So I interviewed her, for the Rolf Institute, forgot to turn on the recorder, talked to her for 2 hours. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to do this from memory. And I wrote this article and I had to describe Emily somehow. And she was the most amazing physical being. And so I called her a somanaut. And for soma, the Greek word for body, kind of understood in a large sense, as opposed to sarx, which just means flesh, like meat. Sarx is like meat, but soma is like the body in a larger sense. And then naut is like to navigate, or like a sailor. So nautical, or so to navigate the body is the somanaut navigates the body, navigates inner space.
That's cool. That's very, very, very cool. I remember doing a one of these with Whitney. And
Whitney Lowe.
Went through bloody, 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 bloody. And at the end, I looked up and went, oh, shit, I haven't hit the record button.
Oh, no.
It's like, oh, no. Can we do this again some other time? Oh, God.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, totally. I always muck things up. I always do. They're one video wonders. Bang. I've got Paula stuff on my YouTube as well, just for help. Free stuff, free content, and you get what you get. And if I've got a bogey in my nose or something, shit, no one told me about that. It just as it is. Well, I'm hoping that people have got some little bit of value. I don't know if we've spoken too much about connective tissue and fascia, a little bit enough to be wise and stop shoving elbows into IT bands, because it's a supporting structure and it's not supposed to give unto your will.
So true. I actually do a little video on that too, somewhere on my YouTube channel.
Oh God.
I do a thing, a bit on the IT band. Yeah, there's a lot of grinding going on out there.
Oh yeah.
People tend to think pain means gain, and it's like, actually pain means pain. And, and your IT band was perfectly fine until you stuck your elbow in it. People were like, oh, it's too tight. Well, why is it too tight? Because when he touches it, it hurts. Well, no, it's that doesn't mean it's too tight. That means he's got his fucking elbow in your pain sensors.
Yeah, exactly. If it's really tight, something else is loose. Get that shit organized.
There you go. That's the spirit.
Yeah. Oh my God. And also, hopefully people have picked up today, what's in the mind is in the body.
Yeah.
And let's make that work to our
I think that's another reason why bodywork is so powerful, because you're noodling around in somebody's mental history. You're in their mind frame, and you're messing with it. You're kind of decompensating their belief system when you touch somebody in places where they haven't moved themselves.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful.
Yeah. Totally.
Good on you, massage therapists. I'm a fan.
Yeah. We all are. Get your hands in there. Get dirty. Be mindful. Rest your hands a little bit and get your ego out of the road, because you'll get a shitload more stuff. Information will come down when you actually listen to these receptors than what you think is going on.
And as Paula says, if you can't get them off in an hour,
you're not using the right lube.
You're fired.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on board. It's been an absolute pleasure to have Gil with us, and get out there and spread the word and spread the love, everybody. Thanks, Gil. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.